What is happening, all the Stack in the Box fans out there? This is Mike Luciano, and you are watching the Stack in the Box NFL Week 2 recap. As if we had any doubts, this was another really wild one, even compared to some of the other wild weekends we've seen early in the year in the last couple of years. This one was really off the rails. So, we are going to give you a full recap of everything on the Week 2 slate. We're also going to do a little bit of previewing because we got two games tonight. Not just one, we got two. We got the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers in what is could be Bryce Young's first ever NFL win if he plays his cards right. And we got the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns, old school division rivals, AFC North. Those are always slugfests. And the Steelers are looking to bounce back too because they got the crap kicked out of them by the 49ers. Hopefully, this will be different for them. Or maybe not. Maybe Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson will run them over. We will see. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, you could find all Stack in the Box on all the big podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We are on all of those platforms. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. That's where you get the whole back catalog of episodes of all the great YouTube shorts that so many really hardworking people over at Stack in the Box end up making for you guys. Let's dive right into a pretty nuts week 2 with one big takeaway. If you want to go look at this whole week and get one big lesson that you want to learn out of this, it came courtesy of the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Jets, which is that the Dallas Cowboys are really good. I know it sounds simple, but I mean, we're talking best team in the league if you want to exclude Kansas City because they got that title emeritus until Mahomes leaves his prime. If you want to exclude that, 1-53, you're just looking, it's going to be hard to deny Dallas. I mean, that defense, which to be fair, I know they haven't really played a murderer's row of quarterbacks. They got Daniel Jones, who didn't even look like he belonged on the field in that 40-0 loss that he had in week 1. And then he went to go play Zach Wilson. And I mean, what else am I going to say about Zach Wilson? I've beat up on him enough on the Jeff Press podcast, and we know what Zach Wilson is at this point. And there are a lot of adjectives that a lot of people could use to describe him. None of them are good. So they've beaten up on a bunch of tomato cans, but that offense is clicking. That defense is aggressive. Micah Parsons, I don't think I'm being outrageous here when I say Micah Parsons right now, if he keeps playing like this, could be the first defensive player to win MVP since I believe Lawrence Taylor, or if not Lawrence Taylor and Alan Page, I still think it was Lawrence Taylor. I mean, he is that good. He's that much of a game wrecker. Even if he's not going to lead the league in sacks, the amount of pressures he's getting against a guy in Dwayne Brown, who even though he's old, Dwayne Brown is a respected veteran. He's seen a thing or two in this league. You can't really fool Dwayne Brown too much, and he just physically dominated him, beat him down in every fashion you could imagine. Hard to watch if you're a Jets fan, but if you're a Cowboys fan, you just had to be laughing your butt off, knowing that you are probably, at very worst, the third best team in the NFC, and possibly the best team in the NFC. From the Jets' point of view, not a whole lot to take from it well. I mean, I can't find one area where there wasn't some sort of calamitous error. Outside, maybe the punting was okay. Thomas Morstead punted okay. You would take the punting out of that. It was complete calamity, a complete 5-alarm fire. The offensive line could not block my grandmother. Zach Wilson was Zach Wilson. I kept hearing about how improved he is and the tutelage of Aaron Rodgers and the mentorship that he will bring, and Nathaniel Hackett coming in instead of Mike LaFleur. And that lasted all of one game, all of that optimism, because Zach Wilson looked just as skittish as he always does. In fact, in terms of passer rating, because of the 3 late interceptions, this was the second lowest rated game of his career in terms of passer rating. The lowest rated, of course, being that 4 interception game against the Patriots in his rookie season, start number 2. And yet here we are in start number 24, and nothing has really gotten better. So, yeah, if you're a Jets fan, there's really not a lot to take from this that's pretty good. But at least at least if you're a Cowboys fan, which there are a lot of them out there, and they're very vocal, you got to be riding high right now. So let's dive into the non-Jets, because that game has been autopsied quite frequently in terms of how bad the Jets are and how good the Cowboys are. Let's go and do a little bit of a stock report. We're going to go stock up and we're going to go stock down, because my opinion on a lot of these guys has really changed sharply in the last couple weeks. And if we're going stock up immediately, I'm going to go with Sam Howell, who led the Washington Commanders to a 35-33 victory over Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos in Denver, which for all it's easy to laugh at him with the whole Nathaniel Hackett mess and let Russ cook and how rough things have been the last couple of years for the Broncos. But Denver's always going to be a tough place to play. And I still think, even though the defense is not what it was last year, I think that defense is still really rock solid. And Sam Howell with Eric Bieniemy, who again has a ton of pressure on his shoulders because he's got to show to all the coaching, all the front offices in the world, he's not just a product of Patrick Mahomes. He goes 27 of 39 with 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks, outdueling Russell Wilson in his first road start of the 2023 season. I mean, Sam Howell, for a guy who was a 5th-round pick, he has really, really impressed me. I thought the Commanders were dead in the water this season. Actually, I was going back, looking at my early season predictions. I thought the Commanders would be in the Caleb Williams hunt. I really thought that. I thought they had a hard schedule with having to play the NFC East 6 times. I thought that was pretty rotten. And I thought that Sam Howell, I mean, I liked the arm talent that he showed at North Carolina. I still thought he was just a 5th-round pick that they were just blindly putting their faith in. And he has proven me emphatically wrong. He's also exposed, if you're a Denver fan, you got to be really nervous about Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, because I know Russell Wilson looked good for a little bit. He had those old school Russell Wilson moon balls, flicking him deep. You're like, all right, Russ is back. Here we go. Here we go. We got this defense. And they were just a complete sieve. They could not stop Sam Howell if their life depended on it. So that had to be a real punch in the gut. Denver's got some chances to bounce back. The schedule gets a little bit easier. But again, Denver's probably thinking, all right, well, this could be a good win. The Commanders are home in week 2. And they didn't get the job done. So big stock up for Sam Howell. No way I thought he would ever put up a performance like that in Denver. The Commanders got to feel pretty comfortable with him at quarterback for the rest of the season. Stock down time, though. And I'm taking my aim. I'm putting it right on the Cincinnati Bengals, who were cooked by Lamar Jackson, which doesn't sound too outlandish, but it was a pocket passing Lamar Jackson. I mean, he ran a little bit, but this was not the Lamar Jackson of getting, 13 carries and running for 90 yards. And then, although he's a very good passer, when he has to beat you solely with his arm, you start to see the flaws. That didn't happen at all. Lamar Jackson was throwing rockets the entire time. He's getting the ball out a lot quicker. The impact of Todd Monken, who was the Georgia offensive coordinator last year, has clearly been felt. He feels very comfortable. And then he went on the road to beat the Bengals, who are already 0-2. And Joe Burrow's not playing well. And I see people saying, well, he was 0-2 before and they went on that big playoff run. He's always typically a slow starter. Well, there's slow starts, and then there's 4.2 yards per attempt, one of which in that game, I believe, was 11-30 against the Browns in week 1. So you combine that with another substandard performance against the Ravens. He had an awful interception when they were driving that Geno Stone just baited him into. He's clearly not over the calf injury. And now Zach Taylor is saying he may not even play on Monday Night Football against the Los Angeles Rams. So you may easily go to 0-3 because Jake Browning, I don't think, is going to outduel Matthew Stafford in one of these games. And then you look at the Bengals schedule at Tennessee. I mean, after the Rams, at Tennessee, I mean, the Titans always manage to grind out these wins. The Cardinals, all right, maybe there. Seattle, San Francisco, Buffalo, the Ravens again after that, the Jaguars. This is not a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. And really, I thought Cincinnati, I think they had a good roster, but I never really bought into they're the clear number 2 team in the AFC. And even though Burrow getting hurt is obviously going to impact those plans, I think this is a little bit of vindication on my end for that. Moving to the Atlanta-Green Bay game, the duel that the Desmond Ridder-Jordan Love matchup ended up becoming. I came away so impressed with Arthur Smith. I thought that he's done an okay job in Atlanta navigating some really odd quarterback situations with Matt Ryan, who clearly wasn't a fit, and Marcus Mariota, who was, I think, a little too volatile to be a starter, volatile in terms of production, to be a starter in the NFL at this point. I thought he handled it pretty well. Desmond Ridder looked horrendous in the first half, but you know what? This guy's a gamer. This guy's tough. This guy found a way in the second half. He looked a lot better. And I give the Falcons credit because, again, just on a personal note, I like seeing teams have different styles. Maybe I'm old school like that, but I like when there are passing teams and running teams and defense teams. I like that stylistic contrast. Sometimes it feels the league can get a little vanilla. It feels like everybody's running the same stuff. You go to Atlanta, they are bucking that trend. They are running hard at you all game long with a bunch of guys. They didn't even have Cordell Patterson in this game, so that attack's only going to get even stronger later on. Bijan Robinson looking every bit like the Bijan Robinson we saw at Texas, looking every bit like a running back that got picked number 8 overall. He is a difference maker. Don't forget about Tyler Algier, a 1,000-yard guy from last year, and Ritter himself, who had a couple nice runs in that game. I'm very impressed with the Falcons. Green Bay, I think Jordan Love was pretty good. I think the 3 touchdowns were a little bit of a misnomer because one of them was a little pop pass to Jaden Reed, and then the other ones, they weren't necessarily the most highly difficult throws. They're not letting him throw downfield a ton, even though I think he clearly wants to. Jordan Love looked okay, but he had a 12-point lead, and that evaporated thanks to some really timely plays from Desmond Ritter. Packers defense a little concerning, but I think that was just superior offensive coaching from Arthur Smith and a Falcons team that in a wide open NFC South, you can't rule them out as a potential playoff team at this point. I mean, that's what they've shown. I'm taking aim at another coach, though, when I'm going back to my stock down because I'm watching Titans-Chargers, and I am so over Brandon Staley. I mean, I was over him when he choked that playoff game with the Jaguars and let Trevor Lawrence pull off that comeback. That's when I was over him, especially now. 0-2 with Justin Herbert, and he's now created a situation where I can't think off the top of my head. There's been a situation where a young quarterback has been that unbelievably talented, that incredibly physically gifted. I mean, he looks like a Greek god just slinging javelins out there, this big giant guy with his athletic, and they just can't win games. They just can't close out these games. And that has to fall on the coach. Yeah, Herbert in overtime, he didn't get the job done. And he didn't in the last week. Like, you can point to things like that. But on a macro scale, this is emblematic of Staley's team. A guy that I think is way in over his head. Stacking the box viewers, I got a little bit of a challenge for you because Brandon Staley got the head coaching job for the Los Angeles Chargers in 2021. Do you know where he was 5 years before that? He was the defensive coordinator at John Carroll. John Carroll, the Blue Streaks, a Division III team. And then in a 5-year span, after a couple position coach gigs and a whole 1 season as a coordinator, he got handed Justin Herbert. And he's flailing. Now, granted, Mike Vrabel's a great coach. Titans always play teams tough. Ryan Tannehill looked like the Ryan Tannehill of old. He did not look like that disaster that he was in week 1. Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears looking like a very strong running back duo. But you got to win these games, man. You had a lead. You had Justin Herbert. That should be enough for you, Brandon Staley. If he is not the first coach fired, I would be stunned. My jaw would be on the floor, agape, because it just wouldn't make any sense otherwise. His clock is ticking with the Los Angeles Chargers. And my last stock up, another coach, and it's a losing coach, Jonathan Gannon of the Arizona Cardinals. And I hear you, whoa, wait a minute. How could a guy who blew a 28-7 lead at home to a team that got shut out 40-0 the week before possibly be stock up? And I'm thinking, well, the Cardinals, more so than any other team I can remember, the only one comparable was Brian Flores' first year with the Dolphins when they had Ryan Fitzpatrick and they had Josh Rosen. Even more so than them. I can't remember a team that was left for dead to the degree that they were. I mean, I saw their over-unders. I saw 3.5 at some places. I mean, they weren't giving them a shot to do anything. And they're 0-2, and it's the old Bill Parcells thing. You are what your record says you are. I get all that. Perfectly fair. But he's got these guys playing hard. Much harder than I thought they would be playing. I mean, they gave the Commanders and Sam Howell a much tougher time than the Broncos did. And the Broncos are a much better defense, I think, in totality. And you know what? I think the Giants, I know they get destroyed by the Cowboys. They're still a much better team than the Cardinals. He had Josh Dobbs playing extremely well. James Conner looks revitalized in this sort of Cleveland adjacent offense because he hired Drew Petzing from Cleveland. The Cardinals are not going to be good. The Cardinals are not going to win a lot of games. They may still end up with Caleb Williams. But Jonathan Gannon, I know it's funny because they memed him a lot because he's kind of this goofy looking guy with this weird way of speaking. He's got him playing tough. They're going to win a couple games they should this year. Don't be surprised if the Cardinals end up being a really tough out. I don't see them ever just getting bludgeoned 45-0. Now, they might next week now that I said that and jinxed it. But I just can't see him. I think Gannon's got this defense at a point where they're really strong and really connected and really cohesive. My last stock down, I'm looking at the Chiefs-Jaguars, and it wasn't Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't even Trevor Lawrence, who I feel bad for him because he had at least 3 or 4 plays where guys caught it in the back of the end zone and they didn't toe tap. I think Zay Jones had 2, Calvin Ridley had 1, and that's a whole different game if they convert that. But I'm looking at Press Taylor, who was the offensive coordinator, and this year, he's calling the plays. Doug Peterson called the plays last year. Trevor Lawrence looked great. This year, Press Taylor's calling the plays. Trevor Lawrence still looks pretty good, but I think there's some room for improvement. And I'm concerned about Press Taylor because if you remember that 2020 Carson Wentz year where he was throwing a pick every game and he got benched for rookie Jalen Hurts, that was when Press Taylor was calling plays. For some reason, Doug Peterson, very good coach, Super Bowl winning coach, completely changed the culture in Jacksonville overnight. For some reason, he's got this blind spot for Press Taylor. And if Press doesn't improve immediately, that could be trouble. Because Tennessee is not going down without a fight at all in that division. Indianapolis and Houston both look better than I thought they would. I think that they're going to be tough outs, even though the Jaguars beat the Colts in week 1 earlier. They're going to be tough with those 2 rookie quarterbacks. Press Taylor's got to get it together, man. Now the Chiefs played amazing defense. I know Travis Kelce was still working his way back from an injury. I know the receivers, even though they were better than they were last week, still aren't amazing. But I think this was more about the Jaguars kind of costing themselves opportunities and missing a chance to go to 2-0. And I think Press Taylor, with his odd play calls, I think it's fair to say at this point, I think he might be the main reason. If he's not, they don't get him in check, watch out in Duval County, man. This has some implosion potential. So let's go really quick. A couple rapid fire takes that I got for you guys right before we get to the big previews for Monday night. Rapid fire. When I look at Bills Raiders, Jimmy Garoppolo, they got to be at least considering drafting a quarterback in the first round. Because Garoppolo, who looked very good in week 1, he was so skittish. He was so nervous. And I'm willing to give Buffalo a lot of credit. They're too good to be an 0-2 team. Josh Allen was a lot safer. They didn't turn the ball over like they did against the Jets in their week 1 loss. And that defense is still very good. But, man, Garoppolo looked way out of whack. And not only that, now he's got Jacoby Myers hurt. He's got Devontae Adams hurt. And then Hunter Renfrow, who could be a difference maker, won't throw to the guy. And then Josh Jacobs, who could be another difference maker, -2 yards. Raiders are in trouble, man, especially with Josh McDaniels, a guy that I have less than 0 confidence in based on his entire resume as a head coach. My rapid fire for Seahawks-Lions is, if you're a Lions fan, sky's not falling. I know that the defense was the problem last year and Seattle put up 37 points, but Geno Smith was just making some plays that sometimes you just got to tip your cap to. And this Lions still ended up putting up 31 points. Jared Goff threw his first interception. It was probably, 7 games, 8 games. It was almost an NFL record for most consecutive passes without an interception. I think Detroit will still be fine. It's a tough loss. It's a home loss. It's a winnable game. It's a team that came in at 0-1 with a defense you can exploit. But the Lions will still, I think, be fine in the long run as long as they keep getting Jared Goff and Ben Johnson and Amon-Ra St. Brown all on the same page. That offense is way too good, I think, to be kind of pushed down to the lower tier in the NFC North. Instant reaction to Colts-Texans. Colts 31, Texans 20. Both of these guys got a franchise quarterback. Both of them. And I know Anthony Richardson got hurt early. He still ran for 2 touchdowns. And I mean, if we're talking pure velocity, pure how hard you can throw the ball, Anthony Richardson might be top 3 in the league. You got to ask that question. That dude is a mortar tower. I mean, over the middle, these passes, I mean, it looked like that old Michael Vick Powerade commercial where he was throwing the ball and the guy got knocked back 15 yards. Then he throws it out of the LA Coliseum after he drinks his Powerade. That's what I think of when I'm watching Anthony Richardson. And how about CJ Stroud? 626 passing yards in his first 2 games. Looking very comfortable, very effective, very efficient, not afraid to take risks down the field, very accurate. I mean, they'd let him throw the ball 80 times. They trust this kid. The defense, I think, will get there eventually. Will Anderson's unbelievable. I think D'Amico Ryans is a good defensive coach. I just don't think he has all the personnel he wants right now, which is okay. It's year 1 of a rebuild. But it's hard to watch Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud and not come away from it extremely impressed with both of these young quarterbacks and extremely hopeful for what the future looks like for both of these teams moving forward. Buccaneers, Bears. I mean, Baker Mayfield sounded like he'd be the story of the game. He's having a mini resurgence down there. I'm going to wait until after week 3 when they play the Eagles. That's, I think, when we'll see if it's for real. Certainly played well in the first 2 weeks. Justin Fields, man, not great. And this is a Justin Fields defender. Not great. 5-22 as a starter now. And I could come out here and bash Fields because he was bash worthy in that game. I mean, he had nothing going for him at certain points. But the bigger indictment is on Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy, who called, I believe, 2 design runs for Justin Fields. You know, the guy who ran for 1,000 yards last season as a quarterback? 2? That's all you got? 2? When that's his best asset? The other problem, too, I'm looking at some of these passing plays. Now, again, Justin Fields, more than any quarterback in the league, I've never seen a guy be this reluctant to throw the ball. He holds that ball so much in the pocket. You're screaming at your TV, just throw it, just throw it. You're top of your lungs, and he doesn't throw it. So that can be hard to watch at point. And I get why Bears fans and NFL fans who clearly see the kid is really talented will be frustrated. I'm watching these plays. I mean, there are guys running into each other. They're calling screens right near their goal line. They really don't have like a plan to attack the middle of the field at all. And then Eberflus, this bozo, Matt Eberflus, he comes out after the game and he's talking about the screen where it's like, well, Justin Fields could audible if he didn't like it. It's like, all right, you're taking no accountability. You're putting it all on this kid. When you, Matt Eberflus, have done nothing. You've lost your last 12 games, Matt Eberflus. You're putting it all on this kid. That's really unfair, I think. Fields is not playing well, but this team, for how they had a ton of cap space and they spent like $100 million on off-ball linebackers and the defense still looks terrible. Some weird drafting decisions, drafting Velus Jones, who was old, and they never play him. And then after they draft Quan Brisker and Kyler Gordon earlier, then they take another DB and Tyreek Stevenson, who's looked okay. But, I mean, my goodness, this defense looks horrendous. It's been really tough to watch because I think they failed Justin Fields. Justin Fields is failing now, but he has certainly also been failed by those around him. And I think it's going to be, I think he might get a third coach, but I can't see a way, even if Fields pans out, that they're going to win anything with Matt Eberflus as the head coach and Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator. Now, the last game that I have a rapid take for, Miami 24, New England 17. Bill Belichick, I know some guys want to act like the sky is falling, and there are problems. I don't like the receivers that they got right now, but Mac Jones looks better than I thought he would. He looks better than I thought he would. I think that he is a little bit more confident. He's more composed. He wasn't trying to make something out of nothing like he was last year. There's a lot of positives from Mac Jones. But I think the bigger story of this game, other than that crazy lateral play at the end of the game, was the Miami Dolphins. And I said this on Stack in the Box last week. I mean, Miami is a Super Bowl contender locked in. Even though Tyreek Hill did not have a great game by Tyreek Hill standards, which is what Belichick kind of does, he takes away your best option. He makes you play left-handed. They adapted. Tua made some mistakes. That interception to Christian Gonzalez was a great play, but he kind of lofted it up there, left Gonzalez a lot of time. They ran the ball down New England's throat. Raheem Mostert looks like he's a rookie with how young and rejuvenated he is in a good way. Tua made just enough throws to get the job done. And I don't care how down in the dumps New England is. In Gillette Stadium with Bill Belichick and a very good defense, you come out with a win, you're doing something right. And Miami did. And with Josh Allen, I know he looked better against the Raiders, but I need to see him against another good defense before I totally erase all my worries about Josh Allen. And the Jets looking completely just defanged and declawed offensively now that Aaron Rodgers is out for the year and Zach Wilson's in. I'm looking at Miami, and if they keep playing like this, I see no reason not that they can't be the number 1 seed, but that they can't represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I have my doubts about Tua. Something about that offense and those skill position players, they make it work. Speed kills, man. Speed kills. So that was a wild, wild, crazy week of football. And we still got 2 more games. We still got 2 more. The first of which is an NFC South matchup. The New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers on Monday Night Football. A game that I think this one's a little bit up in the air. I still think the Saints will end up coming out on top. I like that defense too much, and I like Derek Carr too much. But I'm excited to really watch this game because it'll be my first extended look at Bryce Young. For those that don't know, every year I do a preview or an NFL mock draft. I do a big board, 400 players. I get really up their butt with a microscope. And Bryce Young was not my number 1 quarterback. In fact, he was not even my number 2 quarterback. He was my number 3, Stroud being 1, Richardson being 2, Will Levis being 4, kind of a ways off those top 3. Still had Young as like a top 12 player, I think. But there are some concerns with Young. And I think Carolina, if they said they're not concerned about this, would be lying. Because he is not only small, he is historically small. He is a historically small outlier at the quarterback position because it's one thing to be short. Drew Brees, Kyler Murray, for the grandparents listening, Eddie LeBaron way back in the day with Washington, who was 5'7" and playing quarterback. The height is a problem that you can work around. Being 190, generous. I mean, he got listed at 204 at some things. I don't believe that for a second. I just straight up do not believe that. This kid's 190 pounds. Now, he makes the most of it with his arm talent. It's almost like a baseball player, and that's, some pitchers can be 6'6", 240 and not throw as hard as the 5'11", 190 guy. He just got this arm action where he gets all the velocity he needs. He's incredibly accurate. I love his playmaking. I love his poise. He's won whatever he's needed to win. He's put up insane numbers in college. There's a lot to like about Bryce Young. But I'm just so worried about that size. I mean, he's going to get beat up physically. That's the main concern. Kyler Murray avoided up until the ACL tear, but Kyler Murray's also a once-in-a-generation, I can be top 10 in both sports athlete. Bryce Young is not. And also, Carolina is really not giving him a lot to work with. I like Frank Reich as a coach. Like him as a scheme guy. Like him as a play caller. This offense, thanks to Matt Rule partially, is just not going to be much of a threat. The offensive line I thought would be okay. Ikem Ekwonu with another year. Taylor Moton with another year. They just haven't looked the part in the preseason or in the Atlanta game because Bryce Young was pressured quite frequently. Threw 2 interceptions as part of that. The wide receivers, it's almost criminal what they've done. Adam Thielen might just be collecting a paycheck. I see no way that Adam Thielen can end up being an impactful player for the Carolina Panthers this season. He is just way too old. It's kind of like a running back past 30. You could see it. The guy from like 2015, 2016 with the Vikings, gone. Not that guy anymore. And he's like your number 1 receiver. Jonathan Mingo, I like. I think he got a little overdrafted. I had him as like kind of a 4th round guy. I didn't love him going as like a top 50 pick. I think they're going to put a lot of expectation on him. He'll be okay. I think he'll handle it reasonably well, but I just think personally there was some better options they could have gone with there. The defense is going to keep them in games, so don't totally count Carolina out. Don't throw the baby out totally with the bathwater. Even though I just don't love, the Laviska Shenault, DJ Chark, Terrence Marshall receiver group, that defense will be good enough to keep him in as long as Bryce Young, here's that word again, that word everybody loves, can just manage the game. he'll get a chance eventually to show off the arm and why he was a franchise quarterback and why he was regarded so highly. But for right now, just let Miles Sanders be Miles Sanders. Let guys like Jeremy Chin and Dante Jackson, Brian Burns, and Derek Brown, they got some guys on this defense. And Ejiro Evero, I think, could be a head coach next year. The infrastructure there is solid. The key to them today is don't put too much on Bryce Young's plate. I've seen way too many quarterbacks in way too many situations like this just get the hope beaten out of them. See Zach Wilson from before. David Carr with the Texans. It's not Panthers aren't that bad, but just let Bryce Young make some easy throws. Don't ask him to pull off all these complex things and air it out. And I think that's kind of where they got into trouble in the Atlanta game where the Falcons beat him in week 1 was Bryce was pressing a little bit against a veteran safety and Jesse Bates who knew how to exploit that. So keep it simple. KISS, KISS, that old acronym, keep it simple, stupid. That's the best way for them to come out on top. Now, the Saints, on the other hand, their defense last year, I know they got Joe Woods in, who it was funny because all the Browns fans wanted to fire Joe Woods last year. They assumed that he just was the devil incarnate and the source of everything, all the problems over in Cleveland. And he looked pretty good calling the Saints defense last week. Ryan Tannehill, 3 interceptions, didn't score a touchdown, only 5 field goals in a 16-15 win. This is still going to be all about Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a guy that I have stuck up for, I think, more than just about any analyst of any repute. I think Derek Carr is a fantastic thrower of the football, for what it's worth. I think he got screwed with the Raiders. They never supported him properly. They never gave him a defense. I believe his best defense ever was 23rd in the league, and it was dead last a couple times. How the hell is he supposed to win games with that? So now that I think he's in a better infrastructure in New Orleans, I like their line. He's playing indoors, weak division. The Saints are probably going to get a home playoff game. I think the Buccaneers, for as good as they are, probably are going to tail off. Same with the Falcons. I think the Desmond Ridder made some plays, but he needs to show me just a little bit more before I call him the favorite to win the division. This is still, I think, New Orleans' division to lose. And this is a game they should win against the guy in his second ever start. It'll be on Carr to get the ball out quick because this front seven is coming and coming hard. And if he holds the ball a lot, which I think was a problem sometimes with the Raiders, then things could get a little messy. I think Jamal Williams will be okay, but again, I think the offense doesn't really have all their pieces right now because of the Alvin Kamara suspension. So this game is going to be, I want to see a very West Coasty approach from Derek Carr. I want to see get the ball quick out. I want to see Michael Thomas get a ton of catches. Maybe go over the top to Rashid Shaheed. I'd say that 5 times fast. Go over the top to him a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised. Make sure Chris Olave gets targeted early and often. This is a team that doesn't have J.C. Horn. They're a very hyped young cornerback who's played pretty well. He's not in this game. He got banged up again. This is a perfect game for Olave to thrive. So if I had to do a prediction right now, you're putting me on the spot. I'm going to probably say New Orleans 24, Carolina 13, which sounds like a big blowout, but I think Young's got a lot to learn, and I think he's not really playing with a full deck. I don't love what he's working with, so maybe he can overcome that. If they drafted him number 1 overall after trading DJ Moore and a bunch of picks, they think he eventually will be able to overcome that, but I got to see it before I got to just assume that happens. So once that gets started, at about 8 o'clock, though, there'll be a AFC North game on, I think this one's on ABC. The Cleveland Browns and Pittsburgh Steelers, who could not have had more contrasting week 1 experiences. With the Browns, they absolutely beat Joe Burrow and the Bengals into the dirt emphatically. Even with Deshaun Watson not looking like the Deshaun Watson that we saw in Houston, he still looked kind of rusty, wasn't making the throws that we normally see him make, had a lot of really bad decisions, a lot of hesitating. Maybe that'll get knocked off with rust, and Cleveland, I think, is hoping he'll be the Deshaun Watson that he was with Houston. Again, with Bryce Young, show it to me first. Show it to me first, and then I'll adjust my expectations for Deshaun Watson. But you know what? The Browns have built a team that can win a playoff game with Baker Mayfield. They had a team that was winning games with Jacoby Brissett. They have a tremendous offensive line. They have a guy who I think Derrick Henry is number one in this category, but in terms of purely running the football, north-south running the football, Nick Chubb is as good as I think anybody in the league. And the fact Nick Chubb doesn't get talked about like that is an indictment on the football media landscape. It's a disgrace. He is unbelievably consistent. If anything, I think he's underutilized because the last couple of years they've had Kareem Hunt and they had to get Kareem Hunt some touches every game. They could have used Nick Chubb even more. He's got a tough defense to do it against. I mean, Pittsburgh doesn't have the 85 Bears, the 2000 Ravens, but I like their defensive line. I think they're still pretty creative. Mike Tomlin, as great a coach as he is, always finds some sort of way to get this defense playing well. Even when they have a bunch of guys that necessarily aren't at that level, they always sort of surmise some extra effort up there. So they can't just go in expecting it to walk over him. But I still think Cleveland's offense I think generally they'll be okay. I like the receivers with Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore this year. I think it won't take long for them to get going. Will Watson hit them? I don't know. That's a totally different question. I think he will. I think he'll have opportunities to, even though the Pittsburgh's going to be really hounding him with that pass rush. I think eventually, though, the offensive line, I think it'll be too good. Strength on strength. I think the offensive line keeps Deshaun Watson protected enough to really start hitting Cooper and Moore down the field, which I don't think he really did a lot of in the first game. Looking at it from the Steelers' point of view, I don't want to be alarmist, but if Kenny Pickett, A, looks like he did against the Niners, and B, sustains that for a couple more weeks, I mean, they're going to be back in the quarterback market again. And this is coming from a guy who, I don't want to hate on Kenny Pickett. I'm from New Jersey. This guy's a New Jersey guy. He's from down by the beach, down by the shore. Kenny Pickett looks like a nice guy, but when he got picked, I remember, number one, he was my number 3 quarterback that year. Ritter was number 1. Malik Willis was number 2. So just not, and Howell was 4. So just not a great year for quarterbacks in that regard. But I remember hearing him being the only guy who was not only the only first round quarterback, but the only guy who was taking on the top 80 picks as a quarterback. I'm like, that's the guy? I liked his accuracy. I liked his ability to distribute the ball. I thought his last year at Pitt, he was fantastic. But then I'm looking at the rest of his career. He had 4 years at Pitt. He had 42 touchdowns his last year. And then the next highest he had in the year was, I believe, 14 in an entire season. So not exactly elite production. And it does seem kind of one-hit wondery, linking up with Jordan Addison for his breakout year before he went to USC kind of way. So that's in the back of my mind with Pickett. And that's not going to go away until Kenny Pickett proves me otherwise. So he's got his great chance. Again, last year, he had a pretty good chance to prove me wrong, rookie and all that. But Steelers got some players. Mike Tomlin, good coach. He was winning games. He's a little scrappy. He makes plays when he needs to sometimes, but they weren't winning games wholly on his arm. They were winning games, I think, in spite of his arm. He had more interceptions than touchdowns. The completion percentage was high, and I know Matt Canada stinks as an offensive coordinator. There was a lot of dinking and dunking, a lot of safe stuff. Looked okay for a rookie, but then they asked him to expand it. So far, he's failed in that regard. And for a limited physical quarterback, I don't think he's the best athlete in the world. He's going to be playing in tough environments this whole AFC North tenure, however long it may be. A lot of Pittsburghs, Cleveland, Cincinnati's, Baltimore's. With those tiny hands and the fact his arm strength is, I think, below average for the NFL, there's some real concerns there. And again, he could shut me all up. If he goes out against Cleveland, who has a pretty good defense with, I think, players at every level that you have to be worried about in some capacity, I could readjust my expectations for Kenny Pickett. And the Steelers, who every year I feel like people keep assuming this is the year it's all going to collapse, and then it never does. They always manage to grind out wins. I still think Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season in charge of the Steelers. They could, I think, challenge for the division, or at least a wild card spot, because I think Baltimore might run away with that division. I think a wild card spot might be more realistic. But it all starts with a win here tonight. If they don't get that, you're going to be 0-2. Pickett, in all likelihood, will have had 2 very bad games. The schedule will continue to get harder. And in a draft that is incredibly deep at quarterback, not only is there Caleb Williams and Drake May, but there's also Quinn Ewers and Bo Nix and Michael Penix and Shadur Sanders. There are a ton of guys that could go not only in the top 3 rounds, but in the first round. Pittsburgh's going to be looking at itself with maybe a mid-teens pick and looking at Pickett, and they're thinking, can we win a Super Bowl with him? And I don't know. The best way to reverse that discourse, come out tonight and be aggressive. Go deep. Use George Pickens. Najee Harris can help you be a change of pace, but I think if this game is all Najee Harris 25 carries, I don't know if that bodes super well. I need to see Pickett to the full extent of his powers. I want to see him chucking it deep, making cavalier plays, which he is known to do from time to time. That's, I think, the best way forward. If you want a prediction, though, I don't know if it'll happen. I'm going to go Cleveland 27, Pittsburgh 20. Pittsburgh's tough at home. I believe they're 20-1 in their last 21 Monday Night Football games at home. So they have this ability to really get riled up for Monday Night Football. And again, in Pittsburgh, one of the toughest environments for a visiting player to go to. That's all well and good. I have a tough time seeing if it gets into a shootout, Pickett going shot for shot with Deshaun Watson, or even Najee Harris going shot for shot with Nick Chubb. So those are my predictions. I think the Saints move to 2-0, and I think the Browns move to 2-0, while the Steelers and Panthers go to 0-2. Let us know what you think in the comments, in the chat, wherever it may be. Let us know in the replies on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. Let us know wherever you deem it best. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the first ever, the inaugural episode of Stacking the Box's weekly recap and Monday Night Football preview. I'm really excited for these games tonight because these are going to be two barn burners, I feel like. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Spotify, all the major podcast platforms. We are over there. We're also on YouTube at Stacking the Box. Make sure you subscribe there. You get all those great episodes. You get all those great YouTube shorts that we do, all of our great athlete interviews. We just had one go up with Jason Reed of Bolt Beat, our Los Angeles Chargers website, and Austin Eckler, who was one of the best running backs in the league and a really nice guy, and a really great interview that's done really well. So make sure you check that out, and make sure you keep tuning in to Stacking the Box. Thank you guys so much. I have been Mike Luciano. We'll see you guys next week.